got a Landrover Discovery1 where your windowsill has gone all bumpy due to the inside metal all corroding and falling apart, well, try this for a solution. Cut out the aluminium metal. So run a Stanley knife just where the edge of the metal is. Both sides. See, this one, the metal is completely corroded away. The effect it has on it is to make the rubber all bumpy on the outside, which tends to make it look a bit old and crappy. And what we'll try and do is try and remove the whole of the metal, because it's only going to corrode again. And to do that, you need to split the rubber off it, which is easier said than done, of course. It looks like it's all moulded into the rubber. So what we've got to try and do is run the Stanley knife right down the edge of the rubber, between the rubber and the metal. At the same time, pulling back the rubber. Now, the reason the metal is in there is it forms a U-shaped, U-shaped shape, which goes, which clamps around the top of the lip of the top of the door and allows it to grab onto it nicely. But an alternative way of making the rubber seal stick on the door is just use some sealant. And anyone that's seen any of my videos, you'll know my favourite sealant is the polymer seal, which is same constituency as car body seam sealer. Very, very tacky, lasts a long time, doesn't give up its grip like silicone seal does. Probably in this application the only downside would be that it's difficult to remove once you've got it stuck on. So I won't bore you too much. I'm going to stop the video at this and we'll come back to it later after I've stripped out the metal. So basically cut it both sides, peel back the rubber off the metal. One more thing I'll just mention while I'm doing this, I can talk at the same time, is that if you can get new ones, of course, then they're not too expensive. Range from about £18 to about £23, depending on which door, strangely. But one of the reasons that I'm repairing this one is that this particular part, which is ASR 2525, for the rear door on the left hand side of a Discovery1, is actually obsolete, and all of the places I've tried are actually out of stock of it, and because it's obsolete I'm not going to get any more stock in. So at the moment I don't actually have much choice but to try and repair it and refit it. And the other thing worth mentioning is, of course, when you try and pull this off the door, you lever up at some point or other, but wherever you lever it up, it's going to end up bending the aluminium. Very difficult to bend back again, and you end up kinking the metal, which is what I've done with this position here, because it's metal that mainly is in that plane. Quite easy to bend that way, but difficult to bend that way. Not too difficult when you're pulling it off because it's supported by the door lip. So trying to refit that with the metal is going to be difficult. You have to securely put it in at both ends. Probably not impossible, but it should be a lot more easy to fit without the metal in it. I'll cut it at the bottom of the metal, underneath the U in the metal. Make sure you don't press too hard with a Stanley knife. You don't want to end up coming out the other side of the rubber. Once you've got a fair amount of cutting on it, you can apply a little bit of peeling as well. Careful you don't cut your fingers, of course. Here we go, this is a little bit better. So I'll keep doing that all the way down, cutting a little bit at a time. There we go, so that's the way to do it. Remains to be seen how the seal looks afterwards.
don't think it contributes a great deal to the actual window sealing process itself. I suppose it does hold the rubber in a particular position, but the sealant will do that as well. So the only concern is to make sure this rubber presses up against the window sufficiently. But the problem with it corroding, of course, it was pushing this edge out, which was making the seal against the window be basically not very good. And then the rail underneath was rusting as a result. So if we can get a better seal against the window, then it's less rust all the way around, really. Now we've got a good hold on it, and it has been cut both sides. The peeling does work a lot better, not really having to cut it underneath here, because we can get a good grip on the rubber and the metal. Whoa, something separated. Ah, that's interesting. So we've got a very small gap between one piece of rubber and another, so I'll have to be careful of that and try and refit that later. Now I see what's happened. Should really have cut the rubber down here, so we're going to have to re-glue that in place. So forget that, just pulling is not a good solution. Really need to be a little careful as to oh, now we've got a hole as well. All these things can be fixed with the polymer sealant, because we'll get it, well, we have got it in black. So what we'll do, I think, is repair the rubber first by sticking this these two bits of rubber back together, and do that, let it set in a few hours or so before we refit it back onto the door, and we can make sure that it's in the correct position, because after it's on the door, of course, you won't be able to see it. Go. Right, so even that end started to corrode, I think. I thought we had a bit in the middle, maybe not. But certainly that end, which is the trailing end, has corroded on all four of my door seals. 3 of them managed to replace with new ones. Somewhat reasonable price. So it's actually not looking too bad, fairly straight. Obviously a lot more flexible, but the door itself will give it sufficient strength to hold it in place and keep it straight with the right sealant on it. And this bit now is no longer bubbling out, which it did originally because of the corrosion. So now we're just applying a little bit of super glue, try and hold these cut edges in place. Once it starts to set in a few places, it will support the other places, and you can put some more glue on later. So now I've got some black polymer sealant, which is basically a high-tack, very sticky sealant. You can see it gets everywhere, it's all over my hands. And what I've done is run a bead of it down in this gap where we had a split in the rubber due to us cutting out the metal bar that corroded. What we need to do is keep this clear of too much crap. Now that is the end that goes on the metalwork, so I want to make sure I don't have too much polymer sealant down there to stop it correctly seating on the edge of the door. And I think at the same time we'll just check, yep, here we go. Let's spread around the polymer sealant in the top half, which is where the water goes. This doesn't matter quite so much. Let's dollop that bit down there. Doesn't matter quite so much in terms of the thickness, does matter a bit in terms of whether you've got it sealed or not. Don't really want the water coming down into the door at the middle portion of the door. That should do. Right, we'll leave that to dry now before trying to attach that to the door. It's a trial fitting of the renovated side rubber. You can see with age it's shrunk a little bit. So there's a bit of a gap at that side, but that's no problem because now we haven't got the metal in it, we can just stretch it out a bit. So I'll probably glue that side with some polymer sealant first, let that set, and then stretch and glue this side. See, it does stretch reasonably well. And this side is held in with a little clip around the corner. Use polymer sealant to put it in place, but put it in the gap where the metal goes into the rubber. Polymer sealant being very, very tacky, sticky, long lasting, should hold that in place. Right, that's the rubber strip fully glued, finally fitted. And at least now this part is not bulging out due to the corrosion, and is not separating away from the glass, letting the rain in to rot the gutter below it. And yeah, since this paint doesn't actually move, I've actually put sealant in between the rubber and the glass, the polymer sealant that is, which sticks to everything, and so there's no chance of any water getting in there, and of course keeps the rubber secured with a little bit of extra adhesive. So I put polymer sealant on the top of the metal edge of the door, and then just put the rubber on top of it, and after that's set, that should be fully secure. Now polymer sealant around the end and around this end with the clip back on the inside to secure it in place. Here we go, little clip there, that's stuck on with polymer sealant as well, and job done. Thanks for watching.